Okay, so welcome back to SwitchCorner. Today we're taking a look at Void Bastards, a new first-person shooter that in some ways it's looking to appeal to looter and roguelike fans at the same time. Now, can it do enough to stand out though on the Switch, where I've got to say first-person shooter competition, it's, well, let's face it, weak. I hope so because it's one I've seriously been looking forward to, and I honestly think the Switch at this point needs it. With that though, hit subscribe, join our growing family if you love the Switch as much as we all do here, and let's get started. So story here when we find ourselves on a stranded prison spaceship in the Sargasso Nebula known as the Void Ark. Unfortunately, rather than anyone coming to save us after we failed to reach a checkpoint, it seems we've actually been abandoned. This though it all totally makes sense, after all we are a ship full of prisoners. So yeah, let's face it, our lives at this point expendable. With everyone non-prisoner wise dead aboard though, our friendly artificial intelligence companion on board the ship comes up with a plan. Utilise our 1 million prisoners to repair the ship and get us back to our home base by fixing and restarting the faster than light drive. And with that our adventure begins. Take control of prisoners, investigate spaceships in the nebula around us and collect the items needed to fix what is essentially a floating tin can. This then, it's all presented to us in a comic book style, and while it is about as minimal as storylines go, think like maybe a few 30-second cutscenes and the odd bit of dialogue, I gotta say it all comes together really well with a dark sense of humour that just kinda tops it off. As excuses go to push us towards our objective, I've had much worse times, and yeah, overall I really enjoyed it. So gameplay, and essentially we get a combination of a few different styles here. Part first person shooter, part like inventory management and survival simulation. It's a unique combination of gameplay types that I'm putting out there now. It works really well and creates something that feels very unique and fresh. For the survival exploration element, you can expect here to be presented with what is basically a star chart mapping out the Sargasso Nebula. This, it details the paths you can follow and the ships you can then interact with. While it doesn't sound like, anything revolutionary, it's got a fantastic design that will give you information around the specific ship you're kind of like hovering around at that point. Think like items it predicts you will find on board, the enemies it anticipates you'll face, and the specific conditions of the ship itself. So think like oxygen here drains faster, the ship has no power, meaning no lights, or maybe just all the doors are locked. It won't mean much to you initially, but after more than a few deaths, this will very much factor into every decision you make and how you proceed. Also, don't just think you can like fly directly to your objective here. The game, it kicks off with a very limited, what it calls a care package, and it just gives you a few items, weapons, fuel, so on. But it will be very much up to you on your journey to find more fuel, find more food, to move your way forward. You will not get very far without this. This, I gotta say, it sets up the addictive like risk and reward gameplay perfectly. You'll be looking at the goods on board and then balancing the risk involved and basically the limited life you have available, because I will say damage done in this game, it's permanent unless you come across a medbay on one of the ships you may visit later in your journey. So when it comes to the gameplay, then it starts simple with just a pistol at hand and a minimal amount of bullets. But as you progress, you'll be able to craft a whole armory through a skill tree like system. So think here like shotguns, nail guns, explosives, EMT devices, bombs shaped like kittens that look for enemies. Even like perks like sneakers and armor that reduces damage taken. With the creativity though in full effect here, and its particular kind of brand of humor showing through its design, I was always excited to see what weaponry, what perk was coming next. Most games, I will say, I stick to one weapon that I know that I'm kind of skilled at. Here though, it drove my curiosity to experiment, and because of this I learned what weapons worked well against like particular types of enemies and what situations. It very much added to the strategy piece of Void Bastards. Alright, so shooting, and this is where the real fun begins, I gotta say. Prepare to face waves of enemies of varying size and challenge, from those that are, like small and quick to giants that land powerhouse blows as they stumble towards you. I mean, like how even a lot of the enemies just explode, which is particularly painful. Then all of that, that's before we even Factor in things like onboard security, think like turrets that will just kick your ass, security cameras that are going to give away your location, pirates that follow you around the map and sometimes invade the same vessels as you, even just like environmental effects like this goop on the floor that makes you slip around like an ice skater, or things like radiation poisoning. In a world though where literally everything is out to kill you, it all means nothing if the gunplay doesn't handle well, and I'm happy to say I had a blast with this. The controls are tight, the guns feel powerful, the movement fluid, and yeah, it's just all extremely satisfying. Outside of the weird omission to give you the ability to, aim down the sight of your gun, I have zero complaints with the way Void Bastards handles. It's worth noting here though too, this is for sure not of the, run and gun variety, unless you want to end your life swiftly. Yes, it for sure has these moments, but you constantly need to be aware of what you are facing, your ammo count, but also how challenging are the enemies you're facing. I'd compare this more to something like Borderlands or even Fallout to an extent. The top bit of advice I can give you here is often the best strategy is to run your ass away as quickly as possible after you realise you're doing literally zero damage. If this still all sounds too easy to you, and respect if it does, factor in that lovely little O2 bar at the top of the screen, which drops rapidly every time you board one of these vessels. It makes it all a time scenario. Move quick, loot, kill, escape, repeat. That is very much the name of the game here. So what happens with all of this if you do die? This is where the roguelike element comes into play. The escape pod here, it autopilots back to the Void Ark. You drag out another prisoner and then you repeat. You keep your loot, you keep your weapons, you keep your progression, but then you try again from the very beginning. This is perhaps the most unique element of Void Bastards. Every prisoner is different in their strengths, weaknesses and builds. For example, in my playthrough, the most interesting I had, one was a crackshot dealing double damage. I had one who screamed every time they looted something, giving away my position. Killed them myself honestly in the end because I couldn't handle the audio cue. I had one who was super tall and gave me this weird high viewpoint, though I will say it did reveal secrets I would have missed if I wasn't so tall. And then by far the strangest, one was actually colorblind, meaning every time I boarded a ship, it was in black and white. I died nearly immediately in black and white because for some reason I thought it might be a good idea to go to a ship with no power and no lights. I could have left and moved on, but I had no food, I had no fuel, so I had to take the risk. Didn't go well for me. I think you can tell already I had a great time with Void Bastards. Sadly though, it's not perfect. First up, the ships, well, different. It doesn't take you long to see them all of varying sizes and shapes, and pretty quickly it all actually gets a little bit repetitive in its layout. By the end game I followed a very set pattern that delivered at nearly every location. I'm not going to reveal that for spoilers, but understanding what each room does here will absolutely be necessary to your success. I'll give you one. The dining room obviously often has food, and it's just making these small realizations that will make you progress so much quicker. Every time you board one of these ships, so you have to have a personal goal attached at all times to why you are there and when you need to leave. An area that I often honestly just kind of screwed up. The big problem though, outside of this I will say minor issue, it has sadly performance issues. On my playthrough on nearly every ship, the frame rate was fine mostly, and then it would just freeze for a split second before resuming. This happened on nearly every ship, every encounter I visited, and it even actually happened on the star map itself. I'd say on average 2 to 3 times per ship visit. It never crashed the game or caused too many issues, but ramped the difficulty up here, and this split second can very much be the difference between, life and death. It's very disorientating when, you freeze and then 2 seconds later you're a couple of steps away. It's like you were pretty much moving in the background without you seeing it. That video issue is what you're watching right now. That's not my video, that's in-game. When everything else is good though, when everything is working, it's just such a letdown to see an issue like this. Now finally, when you do beat it, I'd say 10 hours on a normal difficulty, there's plenty to go back for, whether it's new difficulty options, challenges, or even specific requirements like survive with the first prisoner only, or even a weaponless mode. It's not short on content, that's for sure, and I will hopefully be revisiting this one very soon if a patch comes along. Gunplay good, star map and inventory management good, skill trees, character perks, rotating cast good, options good. Performance? You were so nearly everything I wanted, only to stumble with such a major problem. As I say, hopefully a patch can fix this one up sooner rather than, later. So graphically speaking, this one is a beauty. Adopting a cel-shaded style not dissimilar to Borderlands, everything here just oozes style from start to finish, and they commit to this design for everything, whether it's the main menu that takes on the look of a comic book, to the menus and story moments that work with like a comic book cell format. Even the shooting, it transitions from 2D to 3D just effortlessly. Then the prisoners, they each come with their own mugshots in the top left corner, separating them, from simply being a number and actually taking on a personality that matches their attributes. For example, the tall one that I mentioned, you can't see her face because she's towering above the camera. In missions then, the 3D, the visuals are crisp, animations, there's plenty, from the weapon fire modes to explosions to text on screen that gives you an idea of enemy movement. Even the minimap, it's simple in design but offers the perfect amount of detail to make things easy to identify and understand what you need to do next. My only real visual complaint, the ships in the latter half of the game, I'll say they get a little repetitive as you start to see reoccurring designs, reoccurring colour palettes, and then enemies as well. Well, the ones we do get look great. I would have liked a little bit more in the way of variety. Me counting off the top of my head, I think there's about 10 designs here. And they do repeat a few with a few colour shifts here and there to represent like a harder difficulty, but I think maybe they could have doubled this number just to give me a bit more to look forward to. Minor graphical complaints aside though, Void Bastards is mostly a success visually, and I was really impressed with the game's commitment to its comic book influences, and they just absolutely nail it every single step of this journey. So audio then finally, and it's largely successful if at some points I'll say an acquired taste. These points I'm referring to are our enemy voices, who have exaggerated British accents and just swear constantly. I enjoyed it for the most part, even if it does get repetitive, but it's for sure in keeping with the sense of humour that they've went for. Then sound effects, so think like ships, they sound alive. The environmental work is great as you hear the groans and just like the life support around you. And then it's all topped off with some truly powerful sounding weapons and enemy attacks. Where I think Void Bastards most surprised me though, it's actually the soundtrack, the music. It's just all over the place, but in a good way. Picking genres, it seems at random, from the calm of just exploration on your own to the heat of battle. I was always actually curious to see where the music would go next. Would I listen to it outside of the game? Probably not, honestly, but it for sure made me sit up and take note every time something a little bit different came in. Audio overall, I gotta say, it's a nice little package that hits all the right marks in pretty much every single area. So overall, Void Bastards is a masterclass example of how addictive the first-person loot genre can be, especially when you factor in their inclusion of like a roguelike formula. It really does work as a combination of gameplay types. Then with some creative designs for like weaponry, prisoners, enemies, and just generally a huge ton of options, there's a lot to like. Sadly though, outside of a few minor issues, there's one big one holding this Switch build back. A game that drops to 0 frames per second for a split second during nearly every encounter. Is it game breaking? No. But it for sure is annoying and will be absolutely life threatening on higher difficulties. I will say, able to put up with it myself. I still loved every minute of this experience. I wasn't disappointed. But every single time it did happen, I kind of sighed as it broke my immersion just that little bit more and more. I loved the experience. I have every intention of revisiting it. The question is, when will that be? And will that next playthrough be on a Nintendo Switch? Today I'm awarding Void Bastards, and I hate to say this, but a slightly above average 6 out of 10, because for the 95% of the time it does work, it is damn good, but that 5% is such a difference maker. If a patch does drop though, you can consider this score revised to an 8, maybe even a 9 out of 10. Let's just hope now a patch is on the horizon. Right now though, I wouldn't be doing you justice by giving it my full recommendation at this price point with such a big issue. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video and we helped you out today, hit that thumbs up. Leave us a comment letting me know how you feel about the performance of this one. I've tried to show it a few times throughout the video. And yeah, if you're new here, hit subscribe if you love the Switch as much as we all do. I'll see you all on the next video.